4 o'clock Friday afternoon, folks. We'll close out the week down here in downtown Honolulu at the ThinkTech Hawaii Studios up on the 8th floor now of the Pioneer Plaza building. Ted Ralston hosting the show Where the Road Leads. And today the road leads where it's led a few times before, to the Alawai, direct to the Alawai through an incredible systems integration concept and network with two of our sort of original guests on this show some time ago, Ken Kaneshiro, Dr. Kaneshiro from UH. Your title's so long, I can't remember, but environmental and programs.
It's the Center for Conservation Research and Training.
Center for Conservation and Research and Training,
yep,
up on Miley Way in Manoa.
Right.
And Doug Martin,
Ted,
who is the CEO of Development International and has a lot to do with these complex system solutions and such, which Ken is a master of from the systems perspective.
Yes.
Anyway, just as a reminder, this subject is a very complicated subject, and it can tend to turn into monologues. So we have a rule. I get to shut monologues off and aim them in a certain direction if appropriate. Also, the ratings on this show are driven by controversy. So we get partway through the show, we don't want you to agree with each other too much. We want to get some controversy here. That's what builds ratings. That's what gets our pay. And our pay scale is based on how much controversy we generate. So I'd just like to remind you not to agree all that much with each other.
That's going to make it hard.
That's going to be tough. That's going to be really tough.
Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about Hawaii Exemplary State, which was a concept I think that Ken came up with some years ago with Darrell Wong, which is a really interesting and complex subject. And the first potential illustration or application is going to be the Alawai watershed, as I see how things are going here. So Ken, it's been, I think, probably 6 months since you've been on the show, and a lot's happened, maybe only 4 months. Can you go ahead and just give us an update on what's happening with Hawaii Exemplary State and the Alawai component?
Okay.
And if you don't generate controversy, we'll find a way to have that happen. And then I get to re-steer this thing if need be.
Okay. Well, you know, Ted, thanks for having us on the show again. Just in a way of a very quick background, I guess the idea of the Hawaii Exemplary State Initiative started with Major General Darrell Wong when he was the Adjutant General of the Hawaii National Guard. I guess the discussion originated maybe a year and maybe it's 2 years now, 2 years ago. And the question he had posed was, how do we get the community, and specifically the K-12 community, more engaged in collecting data and information that would be relevant to issues surrounding the communities where the schools are located? And mainly because I was involved in a K-12 project funded by the National Science Foundation about 10 years or so ago, I was brought into the picture. But the project has sort of grown more than just K-12 education, science education, and how they can collect data.
So it's kind of about people, the community retouching its area, its aina, its watershed through exploration, scientific exploration, data collection, and this sort of thing. Is that how that?
Yeah.
How
So
it really
the
started?
idea is how to take a watershed, like, and you know, the traditional term for that is ahupua, from the mountain to the sea. And again, it was General Wong's idea to really focus on our initial efforts on the Alawai watershed, because, you know, the Alawai Canal is probably the most polluted water body. And I heard recently that it's the most polluted water body in the world, not just in the United States, but in the world. It's pretty, I mean.
So we have a long way to go.
We do have a long way to go.
A great practice.
Right. I mean, and if we can pull this off and, you know, engage in the community, the K-12 kids, in collecting data and information, that will enable the government agencies like the Hawaii National Guard and Civil Defense to make more informed decisions. What a concept, you know, in getting kindergarten and all the way through high school kids to collect scientifically valid data.
So no longer are people making guesses about what to do about the future, but you're measuring what we can measure.
Exactly.
Defining the system that causes these measurements to occur and to interact with each other.
Right.
And tie it from the mountains all the way to the ocean, frankly, and look at the entire process.
That's exactly right. You know, and when you start to engage the kids, they're the next generation. You know, it's a pipeline to future generations, and these kids will be the future leaders and decision makers in addressing these kinds of global environmental climate change issues.
So we can get ready for climate change and get ready for other issues, including basically all aspects of stressors on the watershed. If we understand how the thing behaves as a system, but it takes the measurements, and it takes the efforts, and it takes the activity
Right.
to tie that all together. This is something we haven't done before.
No, not at this scale anyway.
And by the way, that's happening in Kauai Nui as well. You know, we had, I think, Chuck Burrows on this show a few
Right.
times, and Herb Lee, and
yes.
the same attitude is taking place there. Lanikai, little Lanikai, is a very Ili more than anything else, and it is thinking about the same issue, because right now Lanikai has like no biomass in the fish in the near shallows. What happened to the fish? It went away. No matter, the frigate birds are gone. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So there's some systematic aspect that maybe we can discover.
Right.
And we can't kind of roll the clock back. I mean, Alawai is a totally man-made situation.
Exactly.
We can't undo that, but we have to deal with it and go forward in some way.
Right, exactly.
And Doug, that takes us to the international scope. The same issues taking place not just here in Hawaii where we can learn, but it's taking place in other parts of the world that you're involved in with
Precisely.
Development International.
Precisely. Yes, that's exactly what we're looking at as well. And my involvement with Development International and the Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation is we're looking at the foundation as providing a model, if you would, that we can show a systems approach, not just to the technology, but a systems approach to the community involvement. And we're looking very much at doing this as a from the ground up perspective. Development International is focused on global development by integrating 4 constituent communities together wherever we work, whether it be in the United States or internationally. That is the government agencies, the public sector, who are responsible for policy and execution of public programs, the civil society, which is the heart and the brains and the consciousness, if you would, of the community, including representing all the various elements in the community, different ethnic groups, different women's empowerment, and various issues that are existent in the community. Thirdly, the commercial sector, because it's business that makes everything go forward. Even when you're dealing with nonprofit organizations, they are businesses. So we're looking at invigorating what we do through a sound business approach. And then fourthly, academia, which, as Ken says, is the whole range from kindergarten all the way through graduate school, involving them in a very integrated systems approach. And so what we're doing is we're saying, well, the only way we can really truly call it development is if we take the systems approach and using it from the community forward. So whether we're looking at specific technical issues, as we are in the case of the Alawai Canal, and the cleanup, or whatever we do that's involving local constituencies, we're saying that we really need to start it from the ground up and involve the people and make sure that we address all the various interests and that everyone who is a stakeholder has a voice in the process. And that's how the Exemplary State and Development International dovetail together, because Exemplary State is actually implementing that program here in Honolulu to be expanded statewide. And with Development International, we want to use that as a model for replication in all the communities worldwide that we work in, and actually to be able to go out with Exemplary State to those communities where we have projects going and show them, not show them what to do, but show them how a systems approach works for integrating those same constituencies in their own communities.
So the term exemplary state sure fits this picture because it becomes either an example or a leadership function. It becomes a laboratory, and it's small enough right here in the Alawai that we all know each other, and we don't get lost, and we don't have a situation where it's too extended. You can do it in a narrow environment and learn where the issues are. And that brings in a person who's been on this panel before but isn't here today, and that's Aubrey Yee and the people who do the systems modeling. And I'm happy to introduce that to her and her thinking to the group a while ago. How is that working out in terms of that method of modeling the stressors, the pressures, the factors, whatever it might be that causes the total picture of the Ahupua'a to go in a positive direction or hit barriers? Is that, you're going to be able to start using some of that
Yeah, in fact, we met with Aubrey once earlier, about a month or so ago, And then the second time, just this past Tuesday, so just a few days ago. And she's really the expert in systems thinking and approach to developing solutions for these kinds of problems, environmental problems, and so on. And so we're engaging her, and we're seeking her help actually to.
Are you watching, Aubrey?
And
Yeah.
teaching us how to develop these systems maps that she's so good at. So this past meeting, we had General Wong was there, Doug was there, I was there, and we had a couple of teachers from Iolani School and also from Mid-Pacific School who are already doing these kinds of systems approach to teaching kids at the middle school and high school level. So we're beginning to put together a map, a systems map in how we're going to begin to address that. I mean, I brought something that General Wong,
Please.
I don't know whether we can see this on the screen, but General Wong actually put this together and drew it on the board. And just today I got a digital printout of what that looked like. But what we're looking at is putting sensors out into each of the stream systems. It's Palolo, Manoa, and Makiki Stream, which make up the Alawai watershed. And then having the schools that are found along the streams be responsible for monitoring the sensors and collecting the data, and then by being networked among all of the schools along each of these streams, they can share data and exchange information and learn more about their watershed.
This brings up an interesting point. We do have a Twitter account here, which I'm sure you guys are all totally competent at, and it's at ThinkTech Hawaii. So anybody out there who'd like to add a comment, ask a question, or maybe even join in, hit us on at ThinkTech HI, and we'll see your question pop up and address it right here on the show. But how would people who may be watching or have other means to get a hold of information about HES, how would people contact this program to either be participants or bring ideas forth or something like that?
Yeah, I do have sort of a Exemplary State, Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation portal. So it's not really a website per se, and I can give that out, but I can't really even remember the address of the URL right now. I think the best thing is to contact me directly, either by phone or by email.
Can we say something about what your number is to folks out there?
Yeah, I can
I will
do that.
repeat that during the other segments here.
So my phone number at my office is 956-6739, and that's at the University of Hawaii, the Center for Conservation Research and Training. And my email address is kykanesh@hawaii.edu.
So it's not quite Kaneshiro.
No.
It's stopped short of that.
Right, that's right.
Get
Kanesh.
truncated by the.
Yep.
Okay, we'll repeat that again and maybe get Zuri to put it up on the screen for us. But that's, going back to the systems modeling, to me, that's the real interesting product out of this, because whatever the circumstances are that exist and the pressures that occur, the system model can catch that, and then you can illustrate what is going on.
Exactly.
I've explained to people several times that I look at the work that Aubrey and company do, the complex adaptive systems modeling, is like a weather map. And you can see all the aspects of the weather in terms of the isobars or the wind velocities and such expressed in some way by their individual technical data. But then you can get the picture of how they interact with each other. And things happen at the interface. If the isobars are tight together, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of things are going on. If the things are pretty far apart, it's not very active. So weather maps show complex interactions, and then you have to predict what's coming from that. We can use the same prediction aspect here as well. Yeah. I really, it's just intriguing that we've just, here we are in, 2015 or something, and just sort of starting this way of thinking.
But it's amazing because, even at the University of Hawaii, we have separate departments. They're all in silos. There's not the kind of interactions and systems thinking approach that needs to take place among these different colleges and different departments in order to really come up with the most effective solutions to address these issues. So what I've done is to go to the deans of these various colleges, and they've all listened to what our approach that we are proposing, and they all like that idea. And so I've got, College of Tropical Agriculture, the Hawaii Nui Akea, which is the School of Hawaiian Knowledge, College of Education. They've all agreed to join together in this initiative, and the deans of these colleges have actually signed off as members of my board of advisors of the Exemplary State Foundation. So we're getting a lot of enthusiasm and excitement among these different disciplines. Hopefully, no longer in a silo, but more of an integrative systems approach.
That's fascinating. One of the takeaways that the people who go through this process could have, in addition to benefiting the Aloha, is taking that systems approach and applying it elsewhere in whatever aspect of their life
Very much so.
might be appropriate. You know, when you're a kid, I just was thinking back as you were saying this, thinking back to a kid growing up in Kailua, and you always saw that things weren't being handled in a systematic way. You saw a solution to a flood, you saw a solution to a traffic situation, but it was just like isolated, and you just kind of knew in your head that there was some larger connective thing going on here that we're missing. But somehow we just fill up holes, roll them over with a steamroller, then go on to the next.
Well, it's very
project.
reactive. It's,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
event-driven rather than systems thinking.
Right.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, and so this is fascinating. Let's pick up one thing at the end of our first break. We'll take a break in a second, but let's talk about the World Conservation Conference, which is coming up only 13 months away, 14 months away. Are you getting nervous? And
413 days or something there. I was just at a meeting this morning.
let's talk about that and how HES, Hawaii Exemplary State, might play in the World Conservation Conference when we come back from our first break.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Keith.
My name's Keith Bettinger.
I knew that.
And I'm the host of ThinkTech Asia.
I knew that too.
Here on ThinkTech.
Fabulous. You got a great show going, Keith.
Thank you very much. And for our viewers out there that are interested in ThinkTech Asia, it airs every Tuesday from 4 to 4:45, and it can be accessed online at thinktech.com.
Yeah, so what kind of guests you like?
Well, we have a number of guests from academia, from practitioners of international affairs. Sometimes we have military officials. Sometimes we have public officials on the show. And our goal, we try to talk about current issues in South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Central Asia, all throughout the Asian realm in more depth than you would find in traditional mainstream
That's the
media.
difference, isn't it?
Exactly.
That you're reaching out beyond what ordinary news media would do.
Right.
And that's why we like you so much.
We're trying to provide a thinking person's perspective, an intelligent perspective on what's going on, and we're both sides of the story, or even when there's more than two sides, we try to cover every angle. And I think that's one of the big benefits that we provide here at ThinkTech, is it's a really innovative source of educational programming for the people of Hawaii.
You're great, Keith. You are a great host. You got a great show going on. I watch it every week.
Thanks very much.
Why don't
Jay.
you guys watch it every week too, okay?
4:45 to 4 to 4:45 every Tuesday.
Back live, folks. 4:19 on Friday afternoon. Once again, sitting over the city, watching the city action go by below us. Ken Kaneshiro, Dr. Ken Kaneshiro, Doug Martin, our guests on Where the Road Leads. We're talking about the road leading to the Alawai through a systems matrix to get to the Alawai. We had a great discussion about systems issues involving kids K through 12 and how that leads to a systems takeaway. But the other news you've got is that since we last had you on the show, the HES Foundation has been stood up. Tell us a little bit, Ken, about the Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation.
Right. So, I mean, we've been talking about the Hawaii Exemplary State Initiative for, as I said, close to 2 years now. But it became very clear that we needed to have some kind of organization that would sort of begin to take the lead and be able to administer these kinds of projects with funding, possible funding coming through with Doug's assistance. And so, let's see, it was August of last year, 2014, where I applied for a nonprofit organization incorporated in the state of Hawaii, which we call the Hawaii Exemplary State Foundation. And we've got the approval from the IRS to be a nonprofit tax-exempt organization. So we're all in place.
So that can accept grants, it can accept
Right.
other sources of funding to get
Right.
programs and projects started.
Exactly.
You can own equipment and this sort of thing and have
Right.
kids.
Yeah, in fact, we
become
were just
involved.
talking about renting some office space to begin
Ah,
to.
okay, this is
That's our
getting.
next step.
That's the next step.
That's fantastic. Now, taking that fast forward about 15 months from now, or 14 months from now, to September 2016 and the World Conservation Conference,
Right.
how do you see the HES as a specific entity and the systems concept as a broad generalization? How do you see that fitting into the demonstrations and discussions as such at the World Conservation Conference?
Yeah, so I've been involved with the discussions on the World Conservation Congress, which is sponsored by the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, for, well, I would say 6 years or more now, with a small group of folks in Hawaii who thought that it would be timely for Hawaii to host one of these congresses. The World Conservation Congress is held every 4 years. The last one was in Jeju, South Korea in 2012. And there was a contingent of about 40 delegates from Hawaii. It was led by then Lieutenant Governor Schatz, Marcy Greenwood, Dr. Marcy Greenwood, who was at that time president of the University of Hawaii, and also the chair of the board of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, Board of Trustees, Colette Machado. Those three distinguished leaders led our delegation from Hawaii to make a case for hosting the 2016 World Conservation Congress in Honolulu. And there were actually, it was a tough competition because there were 8 countries that submitted a bid to the IUCN to host in their country. It turned out that Turkey, Istanbul, Turkey, and Hawaii were the 2 finalists. And there was a lot of discussion. I mean, you might think, why would anybody want to go to Turkey with all the, turmoil and going on there in the Middle East, go there for a conservation congress? But there was a lot of support for having it there. So it wasn't a done deal for Hawaii to win that bid. But it took a letter from President Obama a few days before the decision was made to really put us up at the top, to show that the leadership of the United States, the Congress has to be hosted by a country, not the state of Hawaii. We represent the United States, and we had to have the U.S. State Department and the President of the United States to endorse it and show their commitment in hosting the 2016.
So that's a done deal now, and we're on for hosting this in September
We won the
2016.
bid, and yeah, so there's a lot of meetings going on. I was at an all-morning meeting from 8:30 to noon as part of the organizing committee to discuss, what's going to take place, and it's a huge group of people that are committing their time and effort to pull off what we were saying will be the best Congress since these meetings started. The United States never hosted one before. This will be the first time that the U.S. hosted a Congress.
So with the Congress coming here, and we have 16 months or 15 months, something like that, to plan for it, will there be an opportunity to use HES as a center theme, or the systems aspect that we're speaking of with Aubrey and company as a method that should get highlighted at the Congress?
It may not be a theme per se, because I think the systems thinking approach is still a relatively new way of thinking. But certainly we want to use the Hawaii Exemplary State Initiative and the foundation that we're developing here and the consortium of organizations that we're bringing together to address not only Hawaii issues, but be able to apply it at the global scale. We want to showcase that concept, and especially bringing the kids and engaging the kids and their parents and the community in taking ownership of their own ahupua'a, of their own local communities, and building a community that can be more sustainable and resilient to these kinds of global climate issues.
It seems like that being able to stand that up and demonstrate it, let people participate and see how it works would be superior in terms of helping Development International take that same concept
Absolutely.
and export it to other areas.
Absolutely. We want to be able to not just talk about what it is that we're presenting, but we want to be able to showcase it. And we're looking at the Exemplary States project with the Alawai Canal to be that. It's a demonstration of how do you implement systems approach among people, among constituencies in the public sector, in the civil society sector, and academia. How do those people work together, and how do the communities start to take a sense of ownership of decisions that are made in their communities? I think when you look at how things are traditionally done, problems are seen discreetly by themselves. For instance, in the case of the Manoa watershed, there's flood control, there's the pollution issue, there's all kinds of different problems that come together, and traditionally, each of those problems, like the example you gave earlier, you respond to the problem.
Well, the bureaucracy does that, right?
The bureaucracy does that. It's a response based on events. And so there's no, it's exactly the opposite of a systems approach, where not only do you have a very narrow response to the issue, but you don't have any sense of a shared responsibility or a shared approach across multiple stakeholder groups in a community to do that. And so therefore they're not seen as community problems. Well, that's the problem of the water department. That's a problem of the electric company. That's a problem of the city council for passing the ordinances. There's always someone else that it's their job to take care of that. And so it's a very disjointed way of dealing with problems. And as Ken said, unfortunately, in society, even academia, which is the leader of thought and creativity and innovation, academia is divided into discrete target area disciplines.
Competing for grants, I might add.
Yeah, exactly.
Very much so, and for students.
Yeah.
So very much so. And of course, the government and bureaucracy is the same way. It parallels the same model of silos of responsibility. So it's almost more that the systems approach itself is almost more important than what we do, because we will never, even if we make the right decisions but using the wrong methodology, we never really get to developing solutions. And that's what I think we're looking at here. And the Alawai project is a classic example, because as Ken says, it is not just a bad body of water, it's the worst. And there's so much at stake here. There was the flood 11 years ago that did $90 million worth of damage needlessly because there wasn't the proper planning and preparation. There's the threat to public health because of that. Our state's economy is based on our visitor industry, which is Waikiki, and it's always in jeopardy and at risk for what's coming down the watershed into the Alawai. So all of these interests come together, and our community we're all stakeholders in the community, regardless of what our particular role might be. By virtue of being part of this community, we're stakeholders. And so integrating the stakeholders' thinking into a systems approach is the first way to come up with a solution.
And that leads to another interesting observation, to me anyway. We get the systems concept, which pulls things together so that the interactions among the multiple components have some consequence that is traceable back to the origin. But the concept of demonstrating something, systems are hard to demonstrate. And we had a demonstration, so to speak, of the Alawai watershed during Primo back in March. And as I recall, we walked up and down the bank, but it didn't, the circumstances didn't lend themselves to a aha moment. You couldn't quite get an aha moment out of that. So that we had to think of some other way to demonstrate something as complex and broad as a system. So one thing is demonstration. And another thing is, okay, if you're gonna demonstrate, what do you measure? Because we measure the piece parts as they come together. There's a state change between the piece part and then the level of the state, which is the state of the watershed. We need to come up with some parameter, single parameter of some kind. That's the state of the watershed. Is the needle moving in the right direction? Is it moving in the wrong direction? Your bank account is a great example. You probably know pretty much which direction that's going. Going down isn't good. Going up is cool. staying steady, you can probably handle that too. But there's a lot of different factors that make the bank account do what it does.
Right.
But we just inherently think systems-wise at that level because it's personal. If we could figure some way to get a single measurement or two or something out of the Alawai watershed that is like the thermometer at Christmas time when they, when the kettle collects money and they show how much money they're making at the Salvation Army, they have a thermometer that grows. Something like that. Systems have systematic characteristics, reliability, sustainability, resilience, or something like that. So the cool thing about systems is it allows you to start highlighting some of those factors. Then you can get the cause and effect between that end state and the individual components to make it happen.
Right.
So I just toss that out, that getting a really resolute demonstration backed by parametric terms that people can get that aha point. I'd love to.
I think we have two different things happening here at play. First of all, there's the technical systems, the technology solutions or strategies that are implemented, and then there's the human systems. And I think the unique thing here is we have a lot of technological capability, so it's integrating that in a systematic way, but also then how do we systematize the interaction of people?
And that goes back to the
groups.
systems charts that Aubrey is teaching us
Correct.
about, right? All the cultural, even the adverse factors can be brought in at
Exactly.
that level.
And need to be, not only
Right.
can be, but they need to be, because if they're not accounted for, then you have, it's more or less, it sets a red flag in place, and if those aren't dealt with in a timely fashion, then everything that comes after is predicated on some sort of risk factor.
This is getting exciting, and I sense we might be able to get some controversy here. So let's take a break here, about 1 minute.
Okay.
We'll go offline and plan some controversy, and then we'll be back in a minute
Okay.
and
We'll
take
try.
the last segment. Okay.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen. I host Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii, and I do this because I care about science literacy in Hawaii. I want to spread the understanding that science is a vital and interesting part of everyone's life. I want to make sure the broadest possible spectrum of people understand the beauty and the value of science and realize that science plays out each and every day of their lives. I want you to understand that science is fun. So we bring onto this show each week guests who are scientists, from astronomers to zoologists, and we talk about what they do and how they do it. But most importantly, we talk about why you should care about their work, why you should see that their work has value and impact on your life. So I hope you'll join us Fridays, 1 p.m. here on ThinkTech Hawaii. You can watch us via live stream. You can watch us recorded on Olelo, and you can see us each week. We hope you'll join us.
Who won? Well, we survived that break, folks. We had a bit of a fight going here at the table, so we did our premature on the controversy. But we're just talking about the exciting aspects of beginning to look at things from a system perspective. But this is the last segment of this show, and I'd like to ask the two of our excellent guests here, Ken Kaneshiro and Doug Martin, at the very last minute, at the end of this segment, let's have each of you say what you'd like the audience to take away from this discussion, as we've done before. But in the meantime, we can argue.
Okay.
And I was bringing up to our guests the aspect of a single parameter of some kind that we could use as a figure of merit for how we're doing at the system level. In the weather area, there probably is a single figure of merit. There's going to be a good day or a bad day. Leave the umbrella at home or take it with me. And that comes from all this information composited together, and then history and such are used to forecast. If we can get to that point, saying this watershed has got a score of 2 on a scale of 100 or something like that, but we're moving the needle.
Well, I think the problem is, as I started to say before the break, was we're looking at the technology aspect of it and then the human aspect of it.
Oh, sure.
And I think getting one parameter that incorporates both of those might be difficult. But when I was thinking about the technology thing, it made me think of something that General Wong had mentioned the other day when we were meeting with Aubrey. And that's, he had come back from the Hokulea and talking to people down there about what we're doing. And he said, the real parameter that I see, talking about the physical health of the Alawai, is the coral. The coral out at sea. And the coral would be the one physical, talking about the system you're talking about, if they're reducing it to one variable, if the health of the coral, we use that as the barometer, if you
That
would.
reflects everything
Reflects
upstream.
everything upstream.
Exactly.
Everything. And the coral will not thrive if it's not getting positive inputs from upstream. So I think in answering the question, I think the technical part's an easy one. The human part, I'm not quite as sure on.
But that's okay. The system's methodology can incorporate that. It doesn't care if it's technical or human or cultural, whatever it
Right.
might be.
And it might be that getting, also a lot of this is going to be involving the different stakeholders is also going to be the awareness factor. So it's not a matter of just getting public input. This is something I would like the viewers to be thinking about. It's the awareness, being aware of the parameters that we're talking about. And as people focus on that, and for instance, noticing the condition of the coral, the health of the coral, if that becomes something that people are concerned about, then the water quality, and then the aquatic uses of the canal itself. The people that have been here a long time talk about swimming in the canal, which someone who's relatively new, like myself, I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there are things that if the public gets focused on what we're looking at as being the goals, and become aware that those things are all possible to really help that come to fruition, then I think that consciousness can then be translated into something that is measurable in human terms.
So coral health could reflect, in fact, coral health would also be a consequence of human contact. Excessive human
Oh, yes.
contact will result in degradation of the coral. So the coral's a good indicator of a lot of things. And you know, we're having that situation, we'll have Kitty on here from Lanikai at some point in time talking about what they're doing in Lanikai. In fact, what we need to do is get the, I think it's called Hui Malama o Ka'ohau, which is Lanikai, they're thinking about the water quality, thinking about the runoff from the mountains, and the fact that there's so much traffic on the pillbox trail that generates additional erosion. That ultimately ends up in the Alwais and in the ocean. Although the whole thing is being now considered as a system. So the thinking you're doing here and what they're doing there would bounce off each other. In Waimanalo, it's a little different situation, but we're just starting there. Kalani Kukina, who's been on this show before, is kind of leading the thinking in Waimanalo, which has a, again, different situation than does Alawai or does Lanikai. But the root of it all and the common connector is the systems thinking and the way to illustrate these things, including all of the cultural factors at the system level. That's, to me, that's the incredible value. And we need to do something, Ken, to stand that up at the conference.
Right,
And,
I was, you know, Ted, you're failing in developing a controversy because we all agree.
Okay, Jay Fidel, can you fix this for us?
But, you know, just going back to the World Conservation Congress and this meeting this morning, I actually pushed the whole system thinking approach, and they have a whole committee, a subcommittee that's working on community engagement, K-12 engagement, and I really pushed that. And now it's systems thinking approaches in the mission statement.
Ah, okay,
So,
good.
so that's it's going to be a big deal. But you know what Ted Doug brought up about General Wong coming back from his trip from Hokulea and then meeting with Ruth Gates, who is a research scientist at the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology, and she's the one who's going to now come into our group and help us develop this coral reef, coral development monitoring at the mouth of the Alawai. So yeah, I mean that could be your single widget, if you want to put it that way, that would give us some indication of the health of the watershed.
And now to get some controversy going here, finally, before we get kicked out of the studio, just as another thought on this whole system thing, the single parameter is great because it drives you in a certain direction. If you get the wrong single parameter, it drives you in the wrong direction. And offline here, I'll tell you a story that the guy who was the offensive coordinator at the University of Arizona football told us about 20 years ago about having the wrong parameter and how that led the offensive side of the line to have poorer and poorer performance, even though they were getting better and better scores on the system parameter the football team had assigned. It had to do with blocking percentages versus possession ratios. They were focusing on blocking, but not where the ball was. They were focused on blocking all over the field because the guys were getting scored on blocking performance. But if you block near the ball, it's a whole different answer than block someplace where the ball isn't, right? So anyway, you got to get the right parameter. But on the coral health thing, we did some work with Cindy Hunter up at,
Yep.
not far from you, and found it just by accident, a small UAV with an infrared camera, with the infrared filter removed to pick up some radiation in the reflections in the near IR area, showed the defective coral brilliantly. That is, the swimmers have a tough time detecting it in the water. We could see it. The stuff showed up bright pink in the false color imagery. So they said, my God, we could inventory, we could measure, we could go this much faster.
Right.
So it then led me to think that we need a student project that figures out what the actual right bandpass is that is necessary to highlight the coral. You'd like to be able to predict its emergence. You'd like to take the coral situation and you have to null out the water temperature factors and the salinity factors and the other things, I guess, to get a...
So here's where your UAV can be used to...
Gee, what a great idea. Thank you, Ken, for bringing that up. And they've
I
been-
knew that would make you happy, so I thought
It'll make Jay happy too. And in fact, we've had more than one UAV sitting on this table here at various
Yeah,
times.
that's
And,
right.
moving off. And in fact, we're a little bit behind, but we're going to try to get a 333 exemption for this studio to use a UAV in information collection in times
Terrific.
of stress or something like that.
Yeah, terrific.
So we need to bring that into the picture in 2016 as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do people contact you? We need to make sure that we tell people once again how to contact you, Ken, with ideas for HES and ideas for WC, the World Conservation Congress as well. So would you tell us once again,
Yeah, again,
without hesitation?
Yep. You can call me at my office number, which is 956-6739, which is the Center for Conservation Research and Training. My email address is kykanesh@hawaii.edu. So yeah, if you, and I think, did you say that Zuri actually found the website?
Yeah, Zuri, can you bring up the website in our last minute or two here? Okay. Okay. Okay, we can't see from here in the studio, but if you will, we'll take your word for it, Zuri.
Okay.
Thanks very much for showing that to us. And maybe what we should do is bring this story back. Now that you got a foundation going, we got the systems thinking going on, the conference is coming up next year, let's revisit that subject every quarter, shall we, in this format? And continue advising the public and getting feedback from them. At what point in time is it going to be too late to get feedback into the planning for the...
It's never too late.
Never
This
too
is
late.
going to be an ongoing, long-term project.
Excellent.
I mean,
Okay.
we're not going to
It's
solve.
probably going to outlast all of us.
Yeah, for sure.
That's superb.
So we're hoping there's some young people listening out there that are interested in
Exactly.
carrying the torch, so to speak.
I mean, that's the reason why we're starting with K to 12.
K to 12. How have we heard that before, Ken? Now, we have, Zuri's going to give us one more minute here. I would like to ask each of you to say to the audience what you would like to have them take away from this conversation.
Well, I think the first thing, as I mentioned earlier, is just the awareness of what we're doing, and maybe even more importantly, why we're doing it. That we have examples of all the failures we have, which many have manifested in the current state of health of the LOI Canal, are examples of what we end up with by not taking systems approach to dealing with problems and not looking at them from a community perspective, and the fact that even though we have different roles in the community and we represent different aspects of the community, we have one shared commonality, and that is we all occupy this space in this place, and therefore we all have a responsibility for it.
So systems thinking in its application broadly is the learning value here. that
I
we're
think
gonna
that's the
extend.
biggest takeaway, yes, and that will apply, will deal with everything.
Dr. Ken?
Yeah, I think my thoughts are very similar to what Doug just said, but I think the idea is that Hawaii really is a microcosm of what's going on elsewhere in the world. And it's simpler. It's simpler to be able to address these I mean, mountain to sea is sometimes less than 6 kilometers. It's very close to, whereas you go to the continents, mountain to sea is a long distance away. So it's a microcosm of what's happening elsewhere in the world, and we want to be able to develop a model which can be transferred any place else.
So model and leadership are what Hawaii can contribute to this. I just had a thought as you're saying that, sorry, Zuri. Daryl Wong is a paddler, and the canoe has 6 people in it, and it's got to be a system. You can't fight with each other. You can't go in different directions. You all got to face the same way and paddle together. Let's do a thing when he gets back, and use the canoe as a metaphor of this kind of systems thinking and how that
Culturally appropriate.
It totally is.
Yep.
So with that, I'd like to thank you, Ken Kaneshiro and Doug Martin,
Thank you,
once
Doug.
again for coming on the show and helping develop controversy here. And folks, we'll see you next Friday when Where the Road Leads returns to the airwaves.